it's a miracle. Yes, I'm aware of how much of a miracle this is, but a few days ago, the Hypixel admins released a rather interesting update to the game, where they nerfed a lot of items. Off the top of my head, I can think of the Bone Meringue, which was nerfed to have a base damage stat of 270 over the previous, I think it was 320. And also the Hyperion, which, well, and basically all forms of Necron's Blade if you apply the Implosion Scroll to them. It is only effective on mobs in a radius of 6 blocks as opposed to the previous 10 blocks. So if you were to teleport like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks. So here, any mob within that radius would get damaged, whereas previously it would be a lot wider radius, like all the way out to about here, because it used to be 10 blocks. And those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. But today I'm just going to go through the forum thread and I'm going to show you the important ones and quickly skim through some of the less important ones. And just let you guys know what they've done to the game to balance it and also kind of make it worse in many ways. I will explain, but yeah, I'll cut to that forum post now. So this is the patch notes for Skyblock 0.11.3, which is the version which added the new nerfs, and also the most important thing which I forgot to mention, which is Dungeons Master Mode. A lot of people have been waiting for this for a long time, and the admins have finally given it to us. Basically, we have floors 1 through 5 in a harder difficulty, which follows floor 7, which effectively means floor 1 is the difficulty of what floor 8 would have been if they were to make new floors. Effectively, they've just made new dungeon floors, but recycled old dungeon floors and just given things more HP and make them do more damage. There's a lot of new metas around this. It gives you a lot of Catacombs XP. It doesn't contain any new items for now, but the loot drop rate and the Catacombs experience is drastically increased, as it says there. Sorry, I'm just drinking. I won't go into great detail about this because I know most people this is kind of irrelevant to, since it's only really the very end game players who can participate in Master Mode. So yeah, I'll just move on to these quality of life changes. The main one here is remove dungeoneering from skill level average, which is so nice because I no longer have to go to Skycrypt and wait for it to load and then type in my name and wait for that to load and wait for me to learn how to spell just to look at my skill average here, which currently is 37.6, and I'm also apparently upside down. What? Okay, moving on. Yeah. Most of these other ones are kind of useless. Except for maybe you can now click on the Forge notification to walk to the Dwarven Mines Forge area. That's kind of nice. They've actually made a lot of changes to a few dungeon classes, most notably Tank and Berserker. I'll start with Tank. So basically, they've added a passive ability called Absorb, which all players in your dungeon party who are nearby to you will kind of give you their damage, if you know what I mean, or you will absorb their damage. Now, it's not all of their damage, it's only 80%, but it's most of it. So if you were to have a team of 5 people, all walking through a dungeon, then you basically just have this one tank who's just like a walking fortress that just absorbs all the damage from all the mobs, and this is very, very good for Master Mode. However, the problem comes in that, as it says here, the tanks need to put all their eggs in a beefier basket. Effectively meaning you need a EHP close to or over 1,000,000 in order to be a successful tank in higher dungeon floors now. Lower floors, like floor 5 and below, you're probably fine with just your old gear. But floor 6, floor 7, and anything, definitely anything in master mode, you're going to need a lot of EHP in order to tank all of that damage. Now, there is some changes to the healer class, like this tether ability, although I don't really feel like they're really that practical to use. So I kind of just skip over them. You can go, I'll link this thread in the description in case you guys want to go take a look at it yourself, or you can just pause the video and read through it. However, the Berserker class has been changed, and in my opinion this is a buff, and I love this. The Bloodlust passive, which is the one that heals you, now has an extra effect. For every hit they land on an enemy, subsequent hits will be stronger, making Berserkers much better at taking down single target enemies. So effectively, I keep saying effectively. Why am I saying effectively so much? Have you guys noticed that? Is that annoying? Sorry if that's annoying. I don't know why I'm doing that. Basically, if you're fighting, say, a Shadow Assassin, you're dealing... The first hit does about 120k damage. Let's just use that as an example. Your next hit might do 130k, then 140k, then 150k, and etc. This is very nice. It's a pretty good buff to Berserker, especially if you're fighting something like Sedan or Necron, who has a lot of HP. You're going to be able to probably almost double your damage within a couple of seconds of hitting if you have 100 attack speed. And personally, as a Berserker, I like the fact that they've changed this. The meta for so long has just been mage, and more mage, and then a little bit of archer. And I didn't really like that. As a person who personally can't afford expensive gear like Hyperions and maxed out bone meringues, and doesn't even have the Catacombs level requirement for a death bow, I like the fact that Berserker has been given a little more leeway to do their thing and enjoy dungeons. So let's move on to the balance changes. I've already mentioned the bone meringue. They've also, to compensate the bone meringue nerf, buffed a few of the bows, although they've actually nerfed the last breath, which basically means you can't just shoot something twice and remove all of its defense anymore. So, last breath is practically useless now. The mosquito bow has also been buffed, who uses mosquito bows now? Valkyrie has been buffed a little bit, I assume to try and get people to use it more. Estrella has also been buffed, which is incredibly good for people who are trying to run master mode floors. Scylla has been buffed, but who uses that sword? I don't know anyone who uses that sword. Hyperion has been nerfed. Wither Impact now correctly grants combat XP. There are a lot of people I know who are very, very happy about this. And the Implosion / Wither Impact has been reduced to 6 blocks, which I mentioned before. We had discussed with players about the radius of the explosion being too small at 6. However, during testing we found 6 was blah 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 blah. Basically, they're saying they'll monitor it for the next few weeks. If they feel it's too small, then they'll put it back up, but they probably won't, because, yeah, it says, honestly, 10 and even 8 was still a bit way too big. Other equipment changes. The Midas Spoon has been nerfed in a way, kind of. Shut up! Thank you. The Midas Staff, in a way, has been nerfed. If you have 100 million coin Midas Staff, it remains the same. But, effectively, what happened before is... That's that word, effectively, again. Why do I keep saying that? What happened before is you could actually get half of the damage bonus of 100 million coin spoon with a 40 million coin spoon. And that just didn't make sense. So they've effectively changed that to mean that you have to pay 50 mil thereabouts to get half the damage of 100 mil. The Soul Whip has been nerfed, well, mainly nerfed against ghosts, which now changes. It now deals 50% of its damage on the 4 subsequent mob that it hits, and then half for every subsequent mob hit after that. This is to stop people from... Soul Whip is still very, very good for killing ghosts, by the way. Don't read that wrong. It's still very, very good. This is just to stop the people who will line up like 20 ghosts, left-click once, and just one-shot every single one of them. Soul Whip is probably the best strategy for killing ghosts still, especially once we move on to the lifesteal and siphon changes, which I'll talk about in a minute. But they've just nerfed it so you can't, like, kill a million mobs with one hit. Dark Goggles, Shadow Goggles, Wither Goggles, the ability damage is now additive. Basically, they're not as overpowered as they were before, because literally you could just, not even Wither Goggles, you could just wear Shadow Goggles and double your damage, quite literally. Few items have been upgraded to Legendary from Epic, including Frozen Blaze, which, finally, Frozen Blaze has been such a good set for so long. It's now been outclassed by, like, almost everything, but even back when it used to be one of the meta sets, it was still only Epic, and it was like the second best set in the game, or the first best if you're talking about EHP, and it was still only Epic. So yeah, I'm happy that they've done that, and the Wither Relic also now actually upgrades the rarity of the talisman rather than just giving you more damage reduction. Like, that was so dumb, why did it not upgrade that in the first place? The Tarantula Helmet has had a huge nerf, it's taken a huge hit, where there's basically a cap at 1000 strength. Terra Helmet is still meta outside of dungeons, by the way. This is just to nerf it in dungeons, because people were using 3/4 Necron armor with a Tarantula Helmet to get upwards of 5000 strength if they have a high Catacombs level, or if they have a really high Catacombs level, almost close to 10,000 strength. And that is like almost 1000 bonus crit damage, which is just so much better than any other helmet in the game, including even the Warden helmet. But now it's been completely nerfed into the ground. But it is still better than a Necron's helmet for outside of dungeons. If you do have 3/4 Necron, I still use it outside of dungeons, just because it's like a 700k helmet that's as good as the 15 million coin Necron helmet, so you may as well use it. Skeleton Pet has had a little bit of a buff, and also a nerf, but it's overall a buff, which is in a hope that more people will use it, but I don't think anyone's going to use it because it's still bad. Tiger Pet has been nerfed. It's been nerfed and buffed at the same time. The base ferocity has been increased to 25 if it's level 100, or 0.25 per level. But the Merciless Swipe only gives you 50% more ferocity rather than 100%. Oh. I agree that this needed to happen, and I understand their reasoning behind it if you read this section here. I'm not going to bother to read through it. Basically, it was an early game pet that was meta in endgame, and they didn't like that, so they felt the need to nerf it, which is fair enough, but I think the way they went about it is just very wrong. The Tiger Pet before Ferocity existed as a stat literally just gave you 100% chance to hit twice. I think that was literally the exact wording. I don't understand why now they can't just change it back to what it was previously, where it just straight up gives you 100 ferocity. I don't understand why they need any of this 50% or 100% more crap. Why they can't just have 100 ferocity. Like, is that hard? Just gain 100 ferocity. Simple. And that would buff it a lot in the early game and make it a lot better for early game players, especially if they have sets like Werewolf Armor. But it would also nerf it into the ground for endgame players with things like Valkyries and stuff that have like hundreds and hundreds of ferocity and really don't need any more. Which is exactly what their intention was. I really think they should revert this change and do it in the way I just said. The lion pet has had a little bit of a buff. I think it's still pretty bad though, so I'm not going to really go over that. The spirit pet now works even when the pet isn't selected. Now I haven't tested this out, but I'm pretty sure that means it works while you're alive. It says here, people don't usually plan for dying in dungeons, so they thought it would be better if it works all the time. Which is good. Basically, if you don't know what the spirit pet does, it heals your teammates if they get low on HP and you're near them. You have to be near them, obviously. And it also deals damage to nearby mobs. It doesn't deal that much damage, but it's still nice just to have that little bit of extra damage. And if it does work now while you're alive, which I'm pretty sure it does, then that is very good. Fix some arrows not working properly. I don't understand. I don't know that they didn't know that they weren't working properly, so I'll just skip over that. This is a huge change. The boss changes are huge. Basically, all public bosses, you can see the list here, now have a what's called a damage soft cap. Or was that? No, wait, never mind. Yeah, they now have this basically damage cap, which basically means you can't deal above 50k damage. You can deal above 50k damage, but you have to deal 27 million in order to deal 120k. And 120k is the literal cap. It is impossible to deal more than 120k in one hit, no matter how much damage you do. But for 99.9999999% of players, the cap is 50k damage now. Personally, I love this change. It's very controversial, but I myself, I love it, because what was happening previously was just not okay. People were... I kind of understand with dragons, because obviously dragons, you're placing eyes, so you're paying to spawn the dragon, so you should be the one that gets all the loot from the dragon. Fair enough. But with things like Endstone Protectors and the Magma Boss, those were just... They were just getting wrecked. And, like, they would spawn, and one guy, I've literally had it before, where there'll be one guy that deals all 5 million damage, and literally everyone else doesn't damage the boss. And I love that they've done this, because now people that don't deal like 5 million damage in one hit actually get a chance to fight the boss. And there are still metas. There are still metas for these public bosses that can get you first place, and I'm not going to say what they are, because they're like kind of trying to be kept a secret. So I'm not going to tell you what those metas are, but there are new metas for these bosses that will allow you to get first place very easily, and it's very hard to contest you. However, the good part is the fact that everyone gets a chance now. Before, unless you had 4 maxed out bone meringues with elegant tucks and a crown of greed, and a maxed out magma bow to swap to, you ain't touching that golem or that magma boss, unless maybe if you have a Hyperion. But now everyone gets a chance, and I'm so happy that they've done that. They've also made some changes to dungeons in that carries are dead. You need Catacombs level 24 before you can even think about entering floor 7. Or what have I just... How have I done that? Okay, moving on. And there's also obviously other level requirements for other floors, but it's mainly floor 7. And this puts a stop to all of the Cata 19 Hyperion mages who think they're so good at the game and they're better than that guy who has Catacombs 28 just because he doesn't have a Hyperion. Even though the guy who's Catacombs 28 is probably a lot better at the game than the person who's Catacombs 19, it doesn't matter that he has a Hyperion. He is still Cata 19, and there is no getting away from the fact that that guy is Cata 19. So I love the fact that they've changed this. Anyone who does have floor 7 completion already and doesn't have the Catacombs level requirement will still be able to use their items, but any new players or anyone who doesn't have Floor 7 completion already will no longer be able to get it until at least Catacombs 24. I'm going to click on this. Most of these are kind of irrelevant, so I'll just go through the important ones. Every dragon armor has been lowered the requirement for the starred version, so 5-star superior now only requires Catacombs 19, which is so good because this set used to be Catacombs 30. This set is better than Shadow Assassin in dungeons in terms of EHP. I'm not sure the damage is better, but in terms of EHP it is a lot better than Shadow Assassin, and the damage is almost equal. However, it required Catacombs 30. So, previously, you would have adaptive armor, and then the next upgrade from that would be probably Shadow Assassin armor, and then after that it would be Necron armor, and then after that, superior. By the way, I'm talking in terms of Catacombs level here, not in terms of the actually what is good. And that wasn't right, because Necron armor just clowns on superior in every possible way. But now, because it only requires Catacombs 19, it's been put in perfectly the right place, just where it needed to be all along. Right in between Shadow Assassin armor and Necron armor. So I'm excited to hopefully see some more people actually using starred superior dragon armor in dungeons. And yeah, that's I really like the fact that they've done that, because they've, and with basically all of these items here, I won't list them all, but most mainly the perfect armor, the aspect of the dragons, the axe of the shredded and the reaper falchion, and also the soul whip, and maybe tarantula armor, and the Yeti sword, and Frozen Blaze. Those are the main ones. Basically, all of these changes are just putting the armors in their right places in terms of the Catacombs levels that you require to use them, and in relation to how actually good they are. This one is the big one. Lifesteal and Siphon have both been nerfed into the ground. Basically, before you could just get a Flower of Truth and sit in something like Terracotta's phase in Floor 6, and you could just spam left and right click and just not die. I understand why they needed to change that, because that is overpowered. But I think they've gone a bit too far. I think this change is not, it's not okay. You genuinely can't heal anymore unless you have a healer. And even then it's hard. And I like the fact that this has put use to the healer class and also the tank class. But I think it's a bit too far, especially outside of dungeons, because they have actually reduced Slayer bosses and mini bosses damage have been decreased, etc. But the main problem is ghosts. I tried to kill ghosts the other day after they released this update, and I genuinely couldn't. I just couldn't. Because I would die after, like, 4 kills. So, I honestly think they need to at least disable this outside of dungeons, because, like, you can't really get healers out of dungeons. And yeah, it's pretty bad. The healing is pretty bad. These two changes have completely removed the goblin armor immortality, practically, strategy, which finally, thank you, people actually have to play the game. I'm so happy that they've done this. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are mad at me for saying that, but I am so happy that they've done that. This one has completely removed Ice Walker AFKing, which is good because that is so annoying. Wither Monster Skulls now only exist for a maximum of 10 seconds, which is also very good because I didn't like the fact that before I hated the fact that if there's a Wither Monster Skull following you, it will hit you at some point. But now, if you can outrun it for 10 seconds, it will just despawn. And that is so much better. They patched Rabbit Hat Jump Boost in Floor 7, which I don't really care about because I don't do Floor 7, but probably going to be a few people that are mad about that, but it needed to be done. Lesser Orb of Healing will now work in dungeons. I literally wasn't aware that it didn't work before. They removed some AFK methods. Now I don't know whether or not this includes Goblin AFKing with Frozen Blaze Armour. I haven't tested it. I don't know anyone who has tested it, but I'm pretty sure it does. I'm not sure though, but yeah, they've removed some AFK methods on public islands. One sec. Where was I? So yeah, the Spirit Mask now works in dungeons. The Fell Sword now actually works. Class milestones have been removed from the Catacombs entrance, which is interesting. They fixed a couple room issues, which I'm hoping includes the Redstone Warrior room, because previously you literally couldn't complete that room. And they removed Jerobrine. Oh. Oh. Uh-oh. Well, we're all gonna die.